Okay, so in order to create a web server, so a fake web server, well, actually fake is a not so often used term, right? We call it mock, so just like a web server for testing or for mocking up like data, for example. And for that we use mockoon, and yeah, you can simply go ahead and just download it for whatever system you're currently on, so like Windows, Linux or Apple for sure. For now I'm on Windows, I will download it and then just follow the basic installation process and open up mockoon in the end after it's completely installed. Okay, so there we go, this is mockoon, and what we want to do is we go to File on the top left corner and then click on New Environment. Now let's switch over to our Angular project. If you don't know where that's located, just go to your Angular project right here. For example, let's select our tasks folder, so app tasks, right click on it and then simply copy our path. Now switch over to mockoon again and simply you can click in that bar here and then just paste it. So it's for me on desktop and then Angular course to-do list source app tasks. So let's hit enter here, then I'm inside that folder. Inside here, let's create a new folder and let's call it task-api-mocks. So we will bring that fake information or that fake server into our Angular application. So task API mocks. Let's just take that folder and pick it. So let's hit save, and for a name, you'd simply choose task API mocks, just as the folder .json, and JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's a way how you can save data to make it, for example, readable, and to store it. Okay, so a web server for sure has a route, so just imagine it that way. You have your Angular application and you want to save a task, for example, to a database. So you send your task to a specific endpoint of the web server. That web server takes your information and writes it into a database. So what we are developing here is the interface of the web server, right? So we now add a new endpoint. We now give it a name. You could see here we got some HTTP verbs: get, post, put, patch, delete, head. And if you have any sort of information or previous knowledge about web development, then you might know these words. Get is for getting data, post is for creating and saving data, put is for updating data, and delete is for deleting data. That's what you have to know. Okay, so we will create one for get, and the endpoint will be slash, that's just a URL, right? So slash tasks. And you can guess that if we have an endpoint on get tasks, that this endpoint will return us, or should return us, all tasks that we have inside of our database or of our data source. Okay, you can see an empty route here, so like a root route. Let's just remove it. So right click on it and hit delete. We don't need that. So right now we have one route for slash tasks, or one endpoint slash tasks on get. We don't have to specify anything else right now. We can set headers and a lot of other stuff, but right now we just keep it like this. So when we call that tasks endpoint, we want to get some tasks. Let's go to our Angular project, go to the task service, and just copy the content of that tasks array. We will bring it to JSON right here, and we have to restructure it a little bit. We can just take a look in a second. Let me just remove everything here and make up an array. So use the brackets, right? And then we just do it exactly like this. We don't use new task item, right? Because JSON doesn't know what that is. We just use it as a string. So visit and, for example, and then call that, go to gym and all of that. So basically you just have the strings, but they are comma separated. So definitely don't forget that. There we go. So we just get rid of the classes here so that we have a simple array with strings. Let me just get rid of that comma here. Okay, before we start our server and test this, go back to Angular, go into your app folder, so tasks, app, test, API, mock, right? And here we get the task API mocks JSON. So this is basically the configuration or the real content of our web server. And let's just inspect that for a second. You can see the name here, task API mocks. You can see the port, which we can use to actually use that web server once we start it in mockoon. So 3001. And then we have a get, we have a route here, right? On type or method get. Endpoint is called tasks, and the response, you can see the response body here. That's what we are interested in. Right, so if we call that endpoint, we will get a response for sure, and in that response we have a body, and that body, well, contains, as you can see, it contains visit and call that and all of that. Great, so now we need to change the structure of that a little bit, but you get the basic idea, right? So go back to mockoon now, and instead of just returning strings, we will now start returning objects. So what we do basically is we create an object in JSON just like we're doing it in TypeScript. And now we want to define a field or property, right? The property that we have is called title. So this is called, we need to match it with our task right here. So if we take a look at our task, just go to task item DTO, you can see string title here. So this is basically the structure that we are just creating here. So title, and now values are assigned not using an equal sign, but using a colon. And then we can say visit and now we have a real object here. Okay, so as I said, I guess you get the idea. Let's just copy that over for all the elements. There we go. Now let's just bring in the values here. This is just how you set up real JSON objects. Okay, so the idea behind all of this is that we return values in a way that they really match with the structure of our programmed elements, right? So this structure, this object that we have right here is like exactly matching our task because we just have a title and we're setting a title here. So this object will be able to get converted into a TypeScript class or an instance of that class, right? So into an object, as I said. Great. So now let's save it here and go back to the mock information. So you should now see array and then new object, title, visit n, comma, new object, title, call that, etc. Okay, so then it's time to test that mock server. We will do that in the next video just to keep each video a little bit shorter.